Hey, happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope that you are doing well and staying warm. Hey, so usually whenever we hop on your social media feed, drop a video is to encourage you and to lighten and brighten your day. And I hope to still do that, however, in a different form. And so one of the challenges of being a pastor and leading a church is really straddling the fence of two different thoughts. One is you never want to come across tone deaf, if you will, and the idea that we're not aware of what's going on in the world and we're not talking about issues and things like that. And so on one side, you don't want to come across tone deaf and ignore what's going on. And the other side, you don't want what's going on in culture to drive who you are as a church. And you want the gospel to do that. And so there's this constant tension even within me of how can I A, not be tone deaf, but B, not let the culture decide what I talk about and how I lead us at Crosspointe. And so what we've been trying to do is just look to the word and asking God to do what only he can do. So the past month we have been walking through, we walked through 2 Thessalonians. Unintentionally, it became a series where we looked at this letter, but specifically the letters or the prayers that Paul prayed for the church of Thessalonica there. And so we finished that up this week, and we talked about how Paul's prayer where he prays, "Now may the Lord of peace himself, may he himself give you peace at all times and in every way." And one of the things we talked about is that it is his to give because peace is in his nature. He is the Lord of peace. In the very nature of who God is peace. And one thing that we talked about, a characteristic of this peace that he gives is that it's a divine peace, meaning that peace is a part of the nature of God. Through the Godhead, he is always at peace. There's never a moment that he's not at peace with himself. There's not a moment that he's confused or doubtful or fearful or anxious or things aren't going according to plan. He's not having to call an audible. He's not having to figure out what's going on. He is always at peace. There's never a threat to his sovereignty. There's never a change to his immutability. There's never a stain on his holiness. There's never a doubt in his omniscience. He is always at peace. And we take comfort in that, right? And so we've been talking about that. Well, this morning, as I was reading, I was catching up on some readings from the reading plan. I had to read in Isaiah a little bit, and I just jumped to Jeremiah for some reason. I felt led to go there. And I got to chapter 2, and I came across Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 12 and 13. You may be familiar with this passage. You may not, but I just want to read it real slowly and check this out. So Jeremiah was a prophet to the children of God, and this is what he is writing or telling them. Verse 12, he says, "Be appalled, O heavens, at this. Be shocked. Be utterly desolate, declares the Lord." Through the prophet Jeremiah, the Lord is telling the people, hey, be appalled, be shocked, be utterly desolate. That word utterly desolate literally means to be completely dried up, to be destroyed over something that has happened. And this is what happened. Verse 13, God says, "For my people have committed two evils." There are two things that the people of God had done, and there was two evils that they had committed. I'm not going to tell you what that is yet, but they have committed two things to my people, who would be the Israel, right? So these are the people of God. These are the people who God had called out to himself. These are the people that God had led out of Egypt through the wilderness into the promised land. This is God's people. These same people, they had a track record of being forgetful. They had a track record of wanting to go back to Egypt. I've heard it said many times that it took God a day to get the people of Israel out of Egypt, but it took them 40 years to get Egypt out of the people. There are these people who always just forgot about God's faithfulness and his goodness, and they turned to their idols. And so my people, here's the two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters. So the first thing that is they had forsaken him, the fount of living waters. And the second thing is they hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. The people of God who God had been faithful to had done two evil things, and they were so atrocious. God says, be appalled that this happened. These people who I've loved and I've cared for and I've called out to myself, they have forsaken me, the fount of waters, and in doing so, they created cisterns for themselves, and those were broken cisterns. Now let me just dive in. This is my not tone deaf moment. Hey, when we talk about the people of God, he's talking about Israel. In our context today, America, it is not synonymous with the people of God. The church is. And so when we talk about this, whenever we're talking about the people of God doing two evils, that they're forsaking the fountain of life and they're creating their own cisterns, we're not talking about the United States of America. We're talking about the church. We're talking about the people who God has called out to himself, the people that God has redeemed, the people that God has called out and loved and died for. We're talking about the church of Jesus Christ. And the reality is we're just like Israel. Man, we forget. We put our hope in many things. We have the Lord of peace, yet we let what's going on around us disturb that peace that he has freely given to us, that he delights in giving to us, that he gives to us as a privilege. We can have a peace, yet so many times we do just like Israel, and we forsake the fount of life. And we dig our own cisterns to try to find our own hope. And they're broken cisterns. And so let me tell you a little bit about these two things. Think about this imagery that God has given Jeremiah. You have this fountain of life, this ever-flowing, it's constantly giving, it's constantly providing life. And in life, you think about hope, peace, joy, happiness, health. You think this constant, it's the picture of John chapter 4, when Jesus is a Samaritan woman, where he says, when you drink of this water, there'll be a fount, a spring of living water that comes. This is a thing that constantly satisfies. It never runs dry. But instead of remaining there, they themselves decided to dig holes in the ground to try to catch rain. And the cisterns were things that would dig, and it was tanks for rainwater, but these had two issues. Cisterns in Jeremiah had two issues. Number one is they could not produce an ever-flowing gift of water. They could only take what was poured into them. The second thing is they couldn't even retain the water that was poured into them. And here's the deal. God tells Jeremiah to tell the people, you should be appalled at this. You should be shook to your core that the people who know the fount of life have decided to put their life, their security, their trust, and their hope in broken cisterns that cannot ever satisfy. Listen to me, this is an appalling. And we're not talking about DC. We're not talking about Mike Pence, liberals, conservatives, media, or anything else. We're talking about the people of God, the church. Hey, we are so driven away to every media article, every conspiracy theory, everything that comes up, and it rocks us to our core. And what we begin to do when we begin to drift and fall and funnel into those things, what happens is what we're doing is we're digging cisterns in our own life, where we're pouring all of our attention and all of our affection and all of our emotion and all of our hope and our happiness into these cisterns that are leaky, they're broken, they do not satisfy. So what do we do as a church? What do we do? Number one, we must repent. We must repent that we have forsaken the fount of life and begin to dig broken cisterns where we're trying to find life and trying to find satisfaction and hope and peace, and we cannot find it there. Our hope, our fount of life is not in this world around us. It's not even in bank accounts. It's not in family. Now, hey, I love my family, you know that, but the cistern that satisfies the deepest part of Justin is not found in this world. It is found in the fount of living water, in the fount of life. So we must repent. Say, hey God, I am sorry. I'm appalled at myself. Hey, I challenged you yesterday to stop looking around and look up. But I want to ask you today, will you first look in and say, hey, am I digging cisterns for myself? Am I digging these broken cisterns that are not going to satisfy? Or am I trusting in the fount of life to produce this hope, peace, love, all these things that we so desire? Will you return back to the fount and drink? The New Testament says It describes our salvation in 1 Peter that we've tasted that the Lord is good. Have you tasted the living water? Listen to me, because this is our testimony. This is what we share in a world right now that is looking for truth. Let's don't spread conspiracies, and let's don't spread this is what so-and-so, some news article, media, whatever. Just no, let's share the truth that there is a fount of life. And in this time where everything is gloom, let's share hope. In the time when everything is death all around us, let's share life, because we can drink from the fount of life. Hey, I know that's a different tone to this video, but I know for me, God stopped me and said, hey, Justin, you need to repent in your own self. You need to look in your own life and be appalled that you've been digging cisterns and try to find hope and joy, and those are broken, while at the same time you have a fount, an ever-flowing source of life and hope and peace. It's not a matter, is the fountain there? The question is, are you going to that fount? Are you drinking from that fount? Are you returning to that fount to continue to drink of that? Stop digging your own holes and go to the fount. Hey, I know it's a little longer than normal. Hey, please share this video. We look forward to seeing you Sunday.